My lords, on June 15th, Nomads launches, and I really think it's going to change the game. For example, you can create hyperlanes and wormholes. Hyperlanes? What? Let's get into it. Today we're going to explore Stellaris Dev Diary 4.20, we're going to look at Ark Ships, Waylines, and some of the new origins as well. But first, a message from the developers. For years they have said moving planets is impossible. For years they've said even the mention of it would make the programmers cry. But they like to do the impossible, and it seems they like to make their programmers cry. Which is a shame really, because I've met their programmers, and they're really nice people. In any case, they did make the programmers cry, and they've made it so that colonies are now separated from planets, and there's a disclaimer that this is definitely going to break your mods. If you haven't yet seen the Nomad trailer, I highly recommend going to see it, it's fantastic. But let's get into the meat of this. What are Ark Ships? Well, they act as colonies, shipyards, and hybrid military science vessels specifically for nomadic empires. Today we're going to be looking at scientific Ark Ships with civilian and military to be explored in a later report. As you can see, here we've selected the Commonwealth of Man, but instead of the regular homeworld screen, we see the Nomad screen. It's rather interesting, as the Ark ship is named Unity rather than the planet, but the star system and the starting solar system remains the same. We see off the bat immediately we have a choice: civilian, scientific, or military Ark ship. I'm assuming we start with one, and we can choose one of the three. Each different type will give us different bonuses. The scientific, as we can see, increases sensor range, ship hyperlane detection range, and survey speed, which is quite cool. It has a unique feature called Deep Scan, which I'm sure we'll learn about shortly. We're shown some artwork of what the individual Ark ships look like. I wonder, do you have a favourite at this stage? I quite like both the blue and the green. Both give quite strikingly different vibes, although it seems like the yellow one was the one that we saw in the trailer. They do, however, look rather fantastic. You'll also be able to level Ark ships up. They have 3 tiers. You'll start at tier 1 and you'll cycle through to tier 3. Over the course of the game, we'll also be able to research other Ark ship classes in addition to technologies that enable the construction of new Ark ships, as well as the upgrades that I've just mentioned. Although the Ark ship classes do differ in specialization, all carry the colonies of nomadic empires, all act as mobile shipyards, all will come equipped with strikecraft and point defense, and all will have unique fleet orders. So immediately off the bat, we know that all 3 have some sort of defense, very much Battlestar Galactica vibes here, and we're teased unique fleet orders. I wonder what that is. Nomadic empires also have access to the Ark Ship Development Council agenda, which replaces the Infinite Opportunities agenda as your starting agenda. This will give you an initial modifier of Ark Ship sublight speed increased by 5, it gives you increased Ark Ship evasion by a flat 5, and your launch effect will give you 25% of guaranteed research towards Ark Ship construction. So I guess we're going to have the option more or less to start constructing Ark ships from the off, or very much from the start of the game, if that is something you wish to prioritize. Though we are told that the modifiers provided by this agenda will depend on your starting Ark ship class. So for a scientific Ark ship, you'll gain modifiers suitable for economic and military development. As you progress through the technology tree, the agenda will grant progress in all Ark ship technologies. So I guess it's going to be one that's important to repeat. Interestingly, we can see the split in technology between the 3 different types of Ark ship. Engineering is military, physics is scientific, and society is civilian. I must say those icons do look good, don't they? All Ark ships have access to an array of special fleet orders, of which the top 4 are familiar. So bombardment stance, building megastructures, fleet stance, and fleet automation. I'm assuming that's things like surveying, perhaps? The fleet stance seems like it's redacted. Combat behavior of the Ark ship is awaiting decryption. Interesting. I guess we're going to find out more about that later. Surveying, it would seem, will be the same as a regular science ship. Deep Scan is new, and this is a more thorough version of survey. Deep Scan has a chance to reveal previously undetected resources, anomalies, or archaeology sites. And you know what? That makes an awful lot of sense, because if the Nomad doesn't have its own territory and it's moving into territory that's already been claimed, already been surveyed, you do sort of need a way to interact with that, I guess, so that makes a lot of sense. Although it does say celestial objects can be deep scanned multiple times, the chance of a discovery drops for each successive deep scan. So yeah, I get that. It will also be quite interesting to see if the same sort of bad luck mechanics or too good luck mechanics work on Nomads. So when I say that, I mean, for example, if you were to find a dig site, your chances of finding another dig site within a specific amount of time is drastically reduced. We've got a couple more things that are redacted, and then we also have spinal mount ability. Most spinal mounts that can be constructed on an Ark ship will grant additional special abilities. So by spinal mounts here, I'm assuming it's talking about spinal mount weapons. So focused arc emitters, tachyon lancers, giga cannons, and the Archaeotech one that slips my mind, ancient ruination laser possibly. In any case, it seems that they're going to get special abilities. Do note that Ark ships cannot research anomalies, archaeology sites, or astral rifts, but can complete some special projects. This is because we don't want your colony being eaten by a dimensional horror, or whatever other evil our content designers have made in the last decade. There's some irony there because the person writing this development diary, Alfred, built the Celestial Orrery dig site, which completely deletes the system. It's one of my favourite dig sites, but there's some irony there indeed. For researching all of the things that I just discussed, nomadic empires still have access to science ships. So it's going to be very much a flotilla. You have your Ark ship and then you'll have science vessels and military vessels following you. We can see the UI for the Ark ship and ooh, that looks really tasty indeed. As Ark ships are unique, we felt it appropriate to give them a custom UI for their design and upgrading, which is found in the ship controls of the colony UI for Ark ships and replaces the armies tab. If they can do this, they can do it for starbases. I really would like a starbase designer. Please. If you could do it for this, you could do it for starbases. The top of the UI shows the Ark ship class, tier, current HP, armor, shields, pops, and cloaking detection. To the right, you have buttons to upgrade the Ark ship tier and view the currently equipped ship components. Note that the components are automatically upgraded depending on research technology. Wait, if they're automatically upgraded, we must still be able to choose them. I'm assuming maybe it's like auto design on ship? I would certainly hope that we can pick what we're outfitting our ships with, surely. It's also very interesting, look, that we've got two leaders. There's Parichandran and Tian Zheng, a governor and a fleet commander. Maybe they're dual leaders. I mean, that's very interesting indeed if that's the case. You can also see the contract control, which is interesting, and the spinal mount as well. There's a couple of more things I'd point out here. Looking at the ship design, their hull armor and shield is remarkably low. These are not very powerful vessels, although that is, I guess, the very first iteration that you start with. You wouldn't want to be getting in a fight with this, especially if you were to come up against sort of early game frigates with even basic torpedoes. I think you're going to be in trouble. So that's very interesting, although it does have 4 point defense slots. To install additional components or add additional functionality, you can build either internal systems or external modules. Okay, it looks like there's going to be quite a lot of depth to this. So we have aura emitters, colony support, defenses, economic support, naval support, and utilities. As an example, here's the Ancient Suspension Field module, which adds 3 large Ancient Suspension Field components to the Ark ship. Okay, the categories of modules are energy weapons, missile weapons, naval support, point defense, projectile weapons, strikecraft, and utility. If you guys don't enjoy ship design, oh dear. This is looking very detailed and complicated, which I think is great. It'll be interesting to see if there's an automated option. I'm sure that there will be. As an example, here is the advanced sensor array, which increases the effectiveness of the Ark ship's sensors. So this is giving sensor range, hyperlane detection, and survey speed. Finally, Tier 3 can equip a single spinal mount located between the habitable arms of the Ark ship. These are powerful late-game installations designed to be mobile kilo structures. Very interesting that they're using the word kilo structure. They sort of introduced kilo structure with Machine Age, with Dyson Swarms and Arc Furnaces, and then it sort of has disappeared a little bit, and maybe it's now coming back. Very interesting. Today we're going to show off the capital shipyard and the subspace imager. So the capital shipyard, nested at the heart of the Ark ship, these yards can build ships of unprecedented size, all the while we travel across the stars. So this is, I guess, just a mega shipyard in space. Okay, so these when I read spinal mounts initially, this is nothing to do with tachyon lancers and so on and so forth. These are all quite different. The capital shipyard does not grant access to any spinal mount ability. Instead, it acts as a mobile kilo shipyard, improving the construction speed of the Ark ship and the construction crews available. We also have the subspace imaging array, which increases base level intel, sensor range, tracking, detection strength. Okay, so I sort of assumed that these would all be big weapons, but it appears not. There are some peaceful things in here as well. I guess the spinal mounts are going to differ somewhat based on the type of ship that you've built. So for example, if you had a science Ark ship, maybe you'd set that, well, you almost certainly would set that up in a different way to a military focused Ark ship. Very interesting. The subspace imaging array is the ultimate mobile sensor. It also enables the subspace image system fleet order that allows the Ark ship to deep scan an entire system at once with a much higher chance of success while also having the chance to discover previously undiscovered hyperlanes or wormholes. What? Previously undiscovered hyperlanes? So we can create hyperlanes. If I'm reading that properly, we can just willy-nilly create a hyperlane. Especially, remember, you can deep scan a system more than once. So you could do that repeatedly. So for example, if your opponent has a choke point that they've fortified up to the hilt, find a system that's sort of close but not linked, deep scan it 100 times, connect it, get in behind them. That is potentially game changing. I mean, I guess you could do the same with wormholes. It's just a little bit more random, perhaps. Wow. Maybe that's the thumbnail of the video. That's crazy. Logistic ships. Logistic ships are the nomadic replacement for construction ships. They are primarily used to construct new waystations, collect resources, conduct special projects that require construction ships, and it's redacted. Although logistic ships can construct megastructures, they're incapable of building new Ark ships. Unlike construction ships, the maximum number of logistic ships a nomadic empire can support is restricted by technology and their waylines. So these guys seem a little bit like villagers from Age of Empires, or peons perhaps. So it looks like they're going to the resource stockpiles and then bringing them back to your Ark ship. Each logistic ship has an internal resource stockpile which is transferred into your Empire stockpiles whenever they visit an Ark ship. This stockpile can be viewed in both the fleet UI for logistic ships and the outliner. They collect resources from waystations and drop them off to Ark ships, and this can also be automated. Yeah, so these guys are like your villagers. So they are going out into the wilderness to gather the bits and pieces and bringing them back to the base. When using a biological ship set, these will also be made of meat. So I guess there's not a bio ship Ark ship, but there are logistic ships that are bio ships. We don't have any screenshots, so we're just going to have to take that comment at face value. Waystations and waylines. Waystations are how nomadic empires exert influence over a system without claiming it as their own. Depending on the installed modules, waystations can collect resources from celestial deposits, observe pre-FTLs, allow for megastructure construction, and more. Hang on, is it saying you can construct megastructures in other people's systems? What? What if you went and built a Dyson sphere in someone else's system? They might be a little upset. All waystations, regardless of level, use your station capacity. This differs from station capacity for starbases, where outposts are exempted. Incidentally, we're looking at having rings, and deep space citadels use 1 and 3 station capacity respectively. That is music to my ears. That is absolutely music to my ears. That's fantastic. I mean, we'll have to see exactly what station capacity turns out to be, but that's really cool. Okay, love that. As avid watchers will know, I've been asking for a cap, certainly on Deep Space Citadels, and I threw it in on rings as well. I think that's going to be really good. Positive decision in the right direction. Having the ability to build 2, 3, or 4 Deep Space Citadels in every single system, it's just silly. Anyway, instead of technologies related to improve starbases, nomadic empires gain technologies to improve their waystations and logistic ships. So we have waystation modifiers, and look, they've got some different buildings to what a starbase would normally have. They have a shipyard though, which is interesting. And then we can see their stockpile capacity going up. You can see the amount of resources they're generating. Their stockpiles depend on installed modules and local system resources. If multiple waystations are built in neighboring systems, they will automatically form a wayline. And a wayline appears to be a lot like a trade route. Depending on modules installed on the waystations, waylines are capable of propagating modifiers to systems and empires connected. Nomadic empires can build waystations in systems owned by settler empires. Doing so will incur opinion penalties, scaling with the number of waystations present, and the various policies of the empire involved. I see, so look, we can see on the opinion screen here that they don't like us because we're slavers, but they also don't like us because we're operating unlicensed waystations. To remove this penalty, nomadic empires can sign diplomatic agreements with settled empires and allow waystation construction in their systems. Okay, I mean that seems quite reasonable. It will be very interesting to see how willing the AI is to accept this. If it's something that can be gamed very easily, or if it's something that is quite difficult to achieve, I mean that's going to be quite a hard balance, I think, for the developers to make. Likewise, two nomadic empires with neighbouring waylines can also sign a wayline pact. Regardless of the empires who have signed the agreement, a wayline pact allows for both to benefit from the modifier and for their waylines to propagate each other's waylines. I mean, okay, this is an awful lot to take in. So the waylines are a bit like trade networks. Nomad empires can combine their trade networks to propagate off of others. The more waylines you have, the more waystations you have, the more resources you collect, and then you need your peons, your construction ships, your logistic ships, to move back and forth from your Ark ship to bring the resources, is my understanding of how all of this goes together. This is a different way of playing Stellaris. This is really a very different way of playing Stellaris. What happens if you lose a logistic ship before it gets back to base? Do you lose the resource? Does the empire that destroyed that ship gain the resource? Like when you destroy a pirate station, you gain the resource. These are all interesting questions. I mean, maybe the delivery is instantaneous, but I wouldn't have thought so. It doesn't seem to me like it would be instantaneous. Very interesting indeed. I feel like the strength of a nomad empire is really going to depend on the sort of empires that spawn around you. If you get a block of xenophiles, for example, I mean, that's music to your ears, because they will generally have open borders with you. They will generally want to do diplomacy with you, and you can roll on through and set up your waystations and go from there. If you come across a block of xenophobes or militarists, you're going to be in really big trouble. It's not like you can necessarily just try and improve relations and build up a big starbase and hide behind it. You're going to have to get that Ark ship out of their way and move it halfway across the galaxy. Really, really interesting. This is so different to anything else that we've had before in Stellaris. Really interesting. Okay, now we're going to move on to the Sacred Path, which is the quote-unquote Halo origin. The Great Journey. Nomadic empires are defined by their wandering, but what if your wandering had a purpose? The Sacred Path is an origin for spiritualistic empires whose ancestors left behind a set of star charts marking a number of sacred sites scattered across the galaxy. Your people believe they are duty-bound to find them all, whether that duty is divine obligation, historical curiosity, or just a really old story someone wrote down once. Well, that's for you to discover. I'm so excited to play this. I grew up playing Halo. The Ark Ship could very much represent high charity. The Covenant fleet rolls around after us, and we go out to find our sacred rings and fire the rings in order to travel on our great journey. This is something I can get behind. When you start with the Sacred Path, your Ark Ship comes with unique district specializations, the Consecrated Community. This replaces your standard civilian jobs with 3 new roles that reflect your empire's spiritual hierarchy. High Pilgrims, your elite clergy, so these are the prophets. They produce unity and they are very serious about the path. They're the prophets. Devoted adepts, specialist researchers and interpreters of the scripture. They also make your ships faster, which I find very on brand for nomadic priesthood. Well, I would say though that they're the elites, but I don't think the elites interpret the scripture. I think they just, shoot stuff. but they do drive the ships. And then we have faithful acolytes, the everyday faithful. They keep the lights on and the food on the table, which even the most devout pilgrim appreciates. Well, clearly they're the grunts, right? They're obviously the grunts. Your first decision comes almost immediately. After 5 days of travel, your council brings the ancient star charts forward and asks the question everyone has been avoiding. Are you following this pilgrimage out of faith, or are you going to chart your own path? This choice influences which of your 3 classes benefits most in the early game, so it's worth thinking about your playstyle before you click. Love it. Love the fact that we get a choice that actually impacts the game. I think that's really cool. From here, the origin unfolds as a series of special projects survey sacred sites, and each one is a remnant of your ancestors' journey. I won't spoil them all, but I will say each site has a distinct identity and asks you a different question about faith, history, and what your empire actually believes. It's music to my ears because you're given the opportunity to shape your empire. What does your empire believe? I really would encourage anyone playing this to not just say, what's the best option, and to think, what does my empire believe? And then pick the one that most fits the theme. That's me saying that, by the way, that bit wasn't the developer. So the sacred site that is revealed to us is the Eye. In the words of our ancestors, there is the unsleeping eye. We understand this to be a reference to an orbital observatory. Interesting. The cradle is the sacred location where your ancestors supposedly received divine guidance, except there's no physical evidence of any presence whatsoever. You can declare the faith validated anyway, or accept that history may have been embellished along the way. Both choices have consequences. So we're also teased with another one called the Intelligence. This is an ancient AI that greets your survey team with the message, worship is enabled, peace may now commence. You can venerate the AI, bringing it aboard your Ark ship, or destroy it. Well, I mean, this is Guilty Spark. This origin screams Halo, and I love it. After visiting all your sites, your empire faces its defining moment. Was any of this real? Did the ancestors receive divine guidance, or did they just write down a really good story? And of course, you're given a choice. The Sacred Path is an origin for players who want their nomadic run to feel like a journey, one where the choices you make along the way shape not just your modifiers, but how your empire understands itself by the end of the game. I could not agree with that more. I know that I'm probably preaching to the converted, but this to me feels like an origin that you really need to not go on the wiki to see what each of the individual things do, and just pick the choice that most vibes with the empire that you're making. Very excited about that one. That looks glorious. We also now have a timeline because of course Nomads launches on the 15th of June, so more or less a month away. On the 21st we're going to get contracts, life on the Ark ship, operational reserves, civilian Ark ships. We're going to learn about one of the spinal mounts, the planetary reprocessor, and we saw that in the trailer, which looked awesome. I want to talk about the trailer in a minute. We're going to look at nomadic empires and kilo structures and the Forever Cruise origin as well. Fantastic. On the 28th, we're going to look at Defender of the Galaxy, the Champion's Forge. This is the sort of arena that we've been teased. Nomadic Paragons, some of which we've seen already. The Stellar Cannon, we're going to learn about on the 4th of June, as well as the Exodus Jump. And then on the 15th, it will launch, and we've got some after patch dev diaries as well. Well, I mean, so far so good. I mean, this all looks absolutely incredible. The final thing I want to touch on is to look at the trailer. First things first, we can see these are clearly marauder or pirate fleets that are engaging or starting to engage the Ark ship, which is interesting for two reasons. One, it's interesting because you assume that the Ark ship isn't doing that mining thing to its own planet. So that feels like quite an aggressive act, especially because the planet looks like it's habitable. Secondly, it's almost certainly not marauders defending that planet. The marauders are trying to maraud, so maybe it's sort of two aggressors coming together. I'm not quite sure what's going on there, but nevertheless, very interesting indeed. We obviously have the mining facility of the Ark ship itself, which I think they've designed so well. That looks fantastic. We then begin to meet a couple of the characters. So we were introduced to 3 characters, 2 humans and this weird alien thing that looks like it smoked too many cigarettes. In any case, none of the characters necessarily feel very friendly. Firstly, because they're strip mining a planet from space, and it's, like I said, I think it's a habitable planet, but certainly the tone and sort of the vibe that we get, and then the fact that this happens. The Exodus jump, which clearly wipes out, it wipes out quite a few ships. We then pan into the three of them sitting around the fire. I think it's very interesting indeed that the gentleman in the trailer, you can't quite see it in this one, but you can see it in another clip. The gentleman in this trailer appears to have the Xenophile logo on his shield and possibly on the hilt of his sword, which doesn't really line up to me because they just annihilated a fleet worth of ships and potentially strip mined a planet. So there is that. In any case, it's a great trailer. I very much enjoyed it. My lords, if you have not pre-ordered Season 10 or Nomads and you want to do so, I would please encourage you to click the link in the pinned comment or the description, and I'll see you next week.